Good morning, participants. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone, on this webinar. Welcome to this consultation on the draft ISO standard guidance for the governance of organizations. My name is Papias Kazawadi, Dedeki, and I am the chair of the WFEO Anti-Corruption Committee. I'm based in Kigali, Rwanda. The International Standard Organization, ISO, is a leading international standards organization that develops standards for a wide range of topics and uses. The World Federation of Engineering Organization is a Category A liaison member of ISO Technical Committee 309, which is developing global standards on anti-bribery, governance, and compliance. World Federation of Engineering Organization has been collaborating with ISO through its anti-corruption committee past chairs, namely Kamara Yadi from Tunisia and Martin Manua from Zimbabwe. The TC309 is working on the ISO 37000 standard on governance of organizations. The team is also working on the draft guidance manual for ISO 37001, the anti-bribery management system standard. ISO 37000 guidance for the governance of organization is a foundation standard and is the basis for other international standards in the areas of risk management, which is ISO 31000, compliance draft ISO 37002, and anti-bribery 37001. The draft international standard ISO 37 is now available for consultation. This foundation standard provides essential guidance for all types of organizations, large and small, including professional engineering institutions. WFEO members, partners, and colleagues are invited to provide their feedback on this important standard. It is essential that we hear your views from every region of the world. This is a key reason for WFEO being an approved liaison member of this important ISO committee. We have set up a page on the WFEO website at www.wfeo.org. This website has the draft international standard and the consultation form. Consultation will close on 15th August 2020. The comments are to be sent to the WFEO Secretariat at the email secretariat@wfeo.org. WFEO will collect the comments and send a single response to the chair of the ISO working group for this standard. And now I am pleased to welcome our speaker, Dr. Marlene Kanga, WFEO past president. Marlene has been a member of the technical committee TC309 Working Group 1 that developed and drafted the standard. She will present an overview and key aspects of the draft standard. We will have the time for questions and answers after her presentation. May I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Marlene Kanga. Welcome, Marlene.
Thank you very much, Papias, for that introduction, and I'm really pleased to be here, and welcome to all the participants for attending this very important consultation, and we look forward to your contributions to this important standard. So now I'm going to share my screen with you and make my presentation. So the draft international standard, ISO 37000, is on the guidance for the governance of organizations. Now, some of you may know that the World Federation of Engineering Organizations is the peak body for professional engineering institutions internationally. And we have members, as you can see in this map, from some 100 nations representing 30 million engineers. And our objective at the World Federation of Engineering Organizations is to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals through engineering. So it's very important that we ensure that our members, the professional engineering institutions of the world, have good governance, and that the engineers who are their members also promote good governance in their own organizations. There are many benefits from good governance, which I will explain in this presentation. So a key goal of this standard is to provide guidance to ensure that organizations in government, in industry, in education, civil society, universities, professional engineering institutions, and accreditation bodies have good governance essential for sustainable development, which is goal 16 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So who is the International Standards Organization, the ISO? It is an independent non-governmental organization with some 164 national members, which are the national standards development organizations in different countries. For example, in Australia, Standards Australia is a member of ISO. So it's a global network of national standards bodies with one member per country. The ISO has developed some 22,500 international standards, but it is a not-for-profit body. It sells standards using those revenues to allow further standards development in a neutral environment. A neutral environment means that no one organization or company can dominate the development of the standards and impose its views on the standard. So ISO provides a platform for developing practical tools and guidance through common understanding and cooperation with all stakeholders. It does this work through 249 technical committees, and there are 100 new standards prepared each month. So how does an international standard get developed? We have a central secretariat in Geneva, which facilitates participation in the standard. And it coordinates the development of the standard and edits it. And once a standard is produced, it markets and promotes it. The national members of ISO enable stakeholders to come forward. It draws on experts within each country to participate in the technical committees. And these committee of experts then come together to develop and write the standard. So an international standard then is a document which contains practical information reflecting best practice. And it describes an agreed way of doing something or a solution to a global problem. And it is most importantly developed by consensus. So there's a voting mechanism where the national members vote on a standard and a significant majority must vote in favor for that standard to be accepted by the world. So the objective of the ISO international standards are to specify clear and unambiguous provisions to help international trade and communication. And this then ensures that the needs of all countries, especially developing countries, are taken into account in ISO's technical work. The International Standards Organization is very much aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. And you can see here the standards that have been developed to date, the range that covers the various UN SDGs, the largest number being in industry and innovation, more than 800 standards. And you can visit the ISO website to find out more about the international standards and their relationship with the Sustainable Development Goals. The technical committee that developed the governance of organization standards, where I have been a member for a number of years, is called TC309. And this committee is committed to sustainable development. In particular, goals 8, 9, 10, 11, and 16. And 16 in particular relates to institutions and organizations, which is the topic of tonight. This committee has been very successful and has so far published 2 very important standards, as well as it has 3 standards under development, of which 2 we hope will be published this year. And the ISO 37000 standard that we are talking about tonight is one of those 3. There are 54 participating national members and 22 observing members, of which WFEO is one. The Technical Committee 309 has so far had 4 working groups. Working Group 1 is the one that has developed the ISO 37000 standard, Guidance for the Governance of Organizations. And consultation with you, our stakeholders, is in progress and closes in August, at the end of August. Working Group 2 is responsible for developing a handbook to support the ISO 37000 anti-bribery management. This will be published at the end of this year. Working Group 3 is responsible for the development of the ISO 37002 Whistleblowing Management System Standard. Consultation is in progress, and this also will close in August 2020. And finally, Working Group 4 is responsible for the development of the ISO 37301 Compliance Management System Standard. Consultation of this occurred in March and closed on the 5th of June 2020, and it is now in the process of going for further edit and then to the board. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations is listed here as a Category A liaison organization in the Technical Committee 309. And you can see the other major international organizations that are also liaison and have provided experts on this committee. And they include significant organizations such as the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the World Bank, the International Federation of Accountants, the Institute of Risk Management, and so on. So we are proud to be participants in this technical committee to develop this very important standard on governance. So what is governance? The primary purpose of good governance is to promote sound decision-making by leaders on behalf of and for the benefit of stakeholders to whom they owe legal and moral accountability. So this is part of the strategic plan of ISO TC309. So why do we need guidance for the governance of organizations? There are many reasons, but in particular, many countries have few relevant laws, codes, and national standards that make governance of organizations weaker. The Corruption Perception Index confirms that weak organization governance is correlated with corruption. And the ease of doing business survey shows that the index is higher in countries with high levels of governance and compliance. So it's very important for sustainable development and for economic development to have good governance in organizations, because this will assist all types of organizations to improve their processes, policies, and procedures with improved performance and outcomes. And so you see here the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, where corruption is highly prevalent in the countries shown in orange and red around the world. So you can see that ISO 37000 is highly relevant to combating corruption. And the Technical Committee 309 is a powerful group in terms of consensus compared, for example, to the G20 and OECD that have also tried to develop similar governance organizations. For example, the G20 is a forum of 19 countries plus the European Union, which is 47 at the most, and the OECD is a forum of 36 countries, as seen in this map here, where the countries are shown in orange and blue. By comparison, the TC309 is made up of some 99 country representatives, 54 participating national members, as shown in blue, and 22 observing, plus 23 liaison organizations. So a powerful combination to produce this very important standard. This standard is a foundation standard. As you can see here in this matrix, the governance of organizations is at the center of a large number of other organizations that are related to it. For example, the anti-bribery standard, which is very important and which our anti-corruption committee at WFEO was involved in some years ago. This was approved in 2017. We have the compliance management standard that has been developed some time ago. The whistleblowing standard, which is undergoing consultation at the moment and will also be published at the same time. So you can see the relationship of these standards to this major standard 37,000. There are other related standards that are of interest to us at WFEO and also to engineers, which is the governance of data, the governance of IT, 38,500, the risk management standard, one of the most well-read and popular standards of the ISO, 31,000, the governance of information security, very important in these times of cyber risk, and social responsibility, which is the ISO 26,000. So you can see the relationship of many standards to the governance of organization standard. So here it is, here's the draft document, and it's available for you to review on the consultation page. I'll briefly explain the structure of the standard and what it's about. It has 7 sections, as you see listed here, and I will explain what each of these 7 sections consist of. First, we have the introduction, which tells us why the standard, what it's about, and it defines key principles and recommends best practices to guide the governing body. The governing body might be the board of the organization, it might be a council, and it also, this standard is also relevant to management and those and staff and others who might be involved in governing the organization, governance practitioners, and of course, stakeholders. This standard is relevant across all countries and sectors, and it enables confidence in good decision-making, in good organization, and in engaging with stakeholders. There are no normative references in this standard. Section 3 describes various terms and definitions. What is governance of organization? What is principles, outcomes? What is meant by strategy? What is risk appetite? And it will explain the roles of various parties, both external and internal to the organization. It talks about social responsibility, commitment to sustainable development, ethical behavior, the need for compliance with laws. Many of these, of course, align very well with what's expected of engineers. And so I think we would all relate to some of these principles. These definitions are important because this is a foundation standard. And so it sets the benchmark and needs to be consistent with other standards on governance. So there's consistency across the organization. The 4th section is a brief one and describes the need for governance and what is governance. It's defined as a system by which an organization is directed, overseen, and accountable to achieve its defined purpose. And the word purpose is a key word, and I will explain more about this, the importance of this word. It also talks about the relationship between governance and management, the roles of the board with respect to staff, which is distinct, necessary, and complementary. And it also talks about governance and stakeholders, because every organization exists to serve, for example, its members, but also the broader community, which is very important. The fifth section, number 5, describes the role of the board or the governing body, the desirable composition and structure, and the qualities of that board, which includes competence, independence, diversity, integrity, and the capacity to provide leadership. So this is very important, as well as competence. So the governing body must be people who are ultimately accountable for the whole organization. So here we have section 7, which is the biggest section of the standard. And this section describes 11 principles of governance. And you will see that there are 5 principles which are foundation principles, and purpose is the first one. And I mentioned that the word purpose is very important. The other 5 are value generation, strategy, oversight, and accountability. And around these 5, then we have other principles which are also important: stakeholder engagement, leadership, the importance of data and evidence-based decisions, risk management, exercising social responsibilities, and ensuring that the organization is viable and successful, that is financially viable and sustainable. And in each of these principles, there's a standard structure of the clauses, which includes the name of the principle, the definition, key aspects of practices, and these are best practices, what the components of those practices are, and some dilemmas. Because in some cases, it's not always clear-cut, and decisions may require judgment by the governing group. So this example provides an instance of those dilemmas and how they can be reconciled. And I'll give you some examples of that so it's not too abstract for you. The section 6 of the framework presents a diagram, and I hope that you can see the framework for governance. This is a very important diagram and brings together all the threads of governance in the standard into the one picture. And you can see at the heart of this in blue is purpose. And there are 4 other items in blue around the circle of purpose, which is value generation, strategy, oversight, and accountability. These are the 5 foundation principles that I mentioned before. So it's very, very important at the core for an organization to understand its purpose and to articulate this clearly to its management, to its staff, and to its stakeholders, both internal and external. So what do we mean by purpose? I'll explain in the context of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. Our purpose is really to be the leader for engineering issues internationally. And we've articulated this purpose in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals to advance the sustainable development through engineering. From this purpose statement, then naturally flows strategy on the work of the Federation to promote sustainable development. And this strategy then also flows to all the working groups and committees of the organization. And this is how we generate value for our members, and also we hold accountable our committees to this strategy to ensure that they deliver. And it is the role of the board to provide oversight on these activities. So you can see how the 5 foundation principles can work in the context of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. In the outer circle, you see the remaining 6 principles which support the core principle, which includes stakeholder engagement, sound leadership, data and decision, risk governance, risk management, social responsibility, and sustainability. And all these 5 taken together ensure effective performance of the organization. And this is in the broadest sense. It is not just financial performance, but performance in delivery against the purpose and strategy of the organization. It ensures responsible stewardship of the organization and, of course, ethical behavior. So you can see how understanding this diagram will build an understanding of governance, which is supported by the text in the standard. I will go further into explaining purpose as one of the principles in the standard because it's so foundational. The governing body manifests the organization purpose by establishing how the organization will generate value over time. So that's related to value generation. Directing the organization and steering its strategy, which is the second foundation principle. Oversight, so it achieves its objectives and demonstrates accountability. So these are the 5 foundation principles. And the remaining 6: engage stakeholders appropriately, lead ethically and effectively, that's leadership, use data as a resource for decisions, governing risk, align decisions with societal expectations that are social responsibility, and ensure a viable and sustainable organization. And all these will lead to effective performance, responsible stewardship, and ethical behavior. But life is not always easy, and we're often faced with dilemmas. And one example that is in the principle number 8 is one that I will explain further to you, because it relates very much to engineering and the increasing use of AI and data in decision making. So many engineering organizations will be faced with this dilemma. So the dilemma is that we want to use data, especially as engineers. It's a rational and evidence-based method of making decisions. But we also need to use data responsibility. For example, technology will allow us to use personal data on an unprecedented scale. But we also have an obligation to ensure privacy so that that imposes constraints on how this data is collected. So for example, we may be tempted when people register, for example, for an event to collect other personal information, which we don't really need to collect. So we should constrain ourselves to limit ourselves to collect the data that is needed for the purpose for which we require. But also we need to keep that data secure and ensure that it is not accessed by people who are not authorized to do it, nor should we share it with other organizations or groups for other purposes that the person who provided the data did not agree to. So this is how the dilemma for sound governance relating to data might be dealt with. And we also have an obligation to manage the risks involved with loss of data, incorrect use, and so on. Another dilemma is with risks, which is principle 9. All organizations identify and manage risk. But there is also a question of many dilemmas, because if you are too risk averse, you may not move forward and you may not take up opportunity. So an organization may take purposeful risks to take advantage of an underlying opportunity, which may be necessary for the viability or the growth of the organization. For example, you might invest in a company that might ensure growth, but which involves risk. Or you may embark on some innovative strategy, which is risky, but which will ensure the future of the organization. So we don't need to be overly cautious, but we need to manage risks such as personal safety so that we are overall sufficiently courageous. So here we have, I'd like to talk now about the next steps on consultation. If we have time, we can have some question and answers today, but we'd like to hear from you further. We have a Google Doc available for you for consultation to ask your questions, which we can answer if we don't have time tonight. But we can also like your feedback on the standard itself at the consultation webpage, which has a draft of the standard, a copy of this presentation and a recording of it will be uploaded, a feedback form and a survey. And questions that you might like to consider is, how useful will this standard be in your organization? Be frank about this, because we want to hear to make it the best it can be. Is the standard relevant to the context of your operations? Is it too complex? Is your organization too small to implement this correctly? What are the benefits of implementing such a standard in your organization? Do you see it as a cost, or do you see that there would be benefits? Will the standard be easy to implement? What are the potential costs and barriers? Are there any external factors that will affect successful implementation, such as legal, regulatory, or cultural? And what additional areas should the standard address, keeping in mind that there are other related standards in the framework, as I pointed out? Here is the commenting form, and we ask that you put the page number, line number, if you can, and then put your comments and suggested change. And we will we will collate all comments from the Secretariat and then send them in a package to ISO. We want your comments no later than the 15th of August. So please send them to the Secretariat for this. And we will also be sending you a survey, which will take about 3 or 4 minutes to complete, which will help you to answer the questions and about the various sections in the standard that I've talked about, and will also be an opportunity for you to give us some feedback. And we thank you very much in anticipation of your collaboration and contribution to this process. So this now ends my presentation, and I am now available to answer any questions if you would like to raise them through the Q&A chat box. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Marlene, for a very good and elaborative presentation. Now, I would like to invite the participants to ask their questions. I know they have been given the link to post their questions, but even here, I think we can allow some questions because we still have about 25 minutes.
Yes. So Papias, you have read the, do you want to ask a question? Do you think the standard will be easy to use, or what are the barriers?
Well, personally, I think the standard normally, when something is new in an organization, there is an experience of hesitation, and people do not understand, and even creates some fear that it might take away some advantages. But this is natural in many new things when they are coming. But as of I have gone through the draft, for me, I think it's going to unlock some barriers that have been experienced, especially in the governance areas of organizations and corporations. So I think it is very beneficial, and I would even like to encourage the institutions of engineers and even other organizations to adopt the document and try to make it their own. I don't see very serious challenges in adopting the document. Thank you.
I think Bill, we've got a question from Bill Kelly. I don't see it in the Google Doc.
Here I can read the question.
Can you read it, please?
Will the organizations be able to certify to this standard? This question is asked by Bill Kelly.
Yes, so it is really up to will organizations be able to certify the standard? Thank you, Bill, for your question. This is not a certification standard as such, but it is aligned with other standards that require certification, where you can get certification, like 9,000 for quality, 14,000 for environmental performance, and so on. So it follows the same structure so that organizations that want to be certified in other areas can do so. But so far, they did not design this standard for certification.
I hope she has got the response, and it will also help others who may have the same way.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any other? I wanted to say that, yeah, go ahead.
I had seen the executive vice president, Mr. Shehu. I'm not sure if he is still here, and can he comment something on the standard itself?
Yeah, they can ask questions but cannot comment. The way it's set up, this is a webinar. So I just wanted to say that a WFEO contribution to this standard was very important, because we brought in ideas of sustainable development, which was not there in the early drafts. We also brought in the idea of diversity and inclusion. And one of the other areas was to make the standard flexible so that it could be implemented by organizations large and small. It can be adapted to all types of organizations, because it's gone to the principles, the basis of the principles of the standards and the framework that I explained. This principle can be applied to large organizations with thousands of employees or to small organizations. So this is very important, and this is to enable organizations to implement the standard no matter where they are, because the goal is to encourage organizations around the world to improve their governance for better performance. And there is no universal standard yet for governance, and this is a major step forward to ensure that.
There is another question from Bonke. I'm not sure if he is our president of WFEO, but he says, is this guideline dedicated to NGOs?
Yes, it is applicable to all types of organizations. I have a question from Mustafa saying, what is WFEO and ISO doing to publicize this standard? So WFEO is doing just that with this webinar. We are publicizing the consultation. The standard is not yet published. The process is that the standard, your feedback is now being sought, as well as the feedback from stakeholders and from members, from the national members of ISO. This feedback will now then be collated, and there will be further meetings to discuss what further changes will be made. This is the final set of changes. And after that, it will be sent for the vote to the national members. If it passes the vote, and it requires a significant majority, I think it requires 75% of the vote, it will then go for publication, and it will be published sometime next year, perhaps around March next year, at which point it will be an official standard, and it will be then available for WFEO to promote this standard, to run training courses, for example, for our members, and to improve the governance in our professional engineering institutions. So this is how the process will go. This is an ongoing process. Mr. Basa has asked, is the standard binding on all organizations. No, it's not. But I think organizations that say, even if they're not certified, if they say that we practice governance in accordance with this standard, that will be a good thing for them to say in their annual reports, for example. So there's no legislative imperative, but this is good guidance because, as I mentioned in my presentation, many countries do not have laws and do not have other forms of guidance for good governance. So this is a very good way of ensuring governance when there's no other forms of guidance in the country. Engineer Owens, the FAO Executive Director, has asked, any strategy for compulsory implementation? So no, there's no compulsory implementation, but hopefully organizations will see the benefit of this standard and will take it on board to implement. And as I mentioned, we also hope that it will not be too onerous and too expensive for organizations to implement, because it's a principles-based standard. And that framework, going back to the framework, is very, very powerful. You can adapt that framework to your requirements without very high costs. So it's not saying you must do this or you must do that, but there are principles there for guidance. So it's like a compass, if you like, to guide the organization without prescribing how you should do the governance. This is the power of the document. Mr. Nathaniel Matalanga said, do we share the draft with our governments? No, it is a draft. The draft is for WFEO members to provide feedback. It is not for governments to provide feedback. Governments are providing feedback via their national standards organization. So if in Kenya, there is a national standards organization, then that standards organization will provide the feedback. We are not looking, and WFEO is certainly not authorized to provide feedback from governments, and there is no mechanism for governments to talk directly to ISO. The only way they can do it is through their national member. So for example, in Australia, Standards Australia is the member, national member of ISO, and Standards Australia will provide feedback, not the government of Australia. Gonki has said, is this guideline dedicated to NGOs? No, absolutely not. This guideline is for all organizations, every type, corporates, universities, any kind of organization, large or small, because governance is universal. Governance is for good leadership and for sound performance of organizations.
We have another question from Calver, which says, can this standard be used as a credible reference material in research? And
yes,
another
yeah, let me answer that.
Okay.
I can see the question. Yes, so,
okay.
So this standard can be used, as I said, by all organizations. So we are not limited in terms of, where the standard is used. It's not, the feedback is for engineering professionals that are members of WFEO. So this is where we want the feedback, because there are other liaison organizations that will also be providing feedback for this. So and to answer the question about a credible reference, it will be a credible reference when it is published. It's not yet published. It's a draft standard, and we're looking for your feedback. So once it is published, then you can refer to it just like you can refer to any other ISO standard.
Another question from Diara.
Yeah, Mr. Diara, Dr. Diara, you have asked, are we confined to engineering professionals only when disseminating the document for feedback? Yes, ideally, as WFEO, we are a liaison organization, and we are seeking feedback from our members of WFEO. This is our role. We are not going, asking you to go nationwide. You can certainly seek feedback from your members, for example, the Zimbabwe Institution of Engineers, and collate that and send it to us. That is fine. But please, this is simply a recall for feedback to the draft. It's not the final standard, and the final standard will be issued sometime in early 2021, I think around March. Any other questions?
Mustafa Shehu had asked to speak. I'm not sure if he is online. Can we give him
yes,
time?
He can speak if he wishes to.
Mustafa?
I'll just see if there are any other comments.
Martin Manua? If Mustafa Shehu is not there, Martin Manua, could he be around?
I'll just repeat also the consultation. If you can answer the surveys, we will be sending you surveys. The survey can be answered by anyone who is, like your members of your institutions. There's no limit there. And you can also please provide your feedback on the form, on the consultation form.
Mustafa Shehu is around.
Yes.
Can you speak?
Yes, I'm around. Are you hearing me?
Yes, please. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, I have asked my question, and the presenter has done justice to the question. But I just want to comment on the hard work being done by those people who are really drafting this particular governance document. The WFEO past president and yourself as the chair of the anti-corruption. And this kind of webinar is really very important. I'm particularly happy with the publicity it got, but certainly we need to do more on the publicity of this document, as I've earlier said. So in my capacity as WFEO vice president, we shall make sure that this publicity is made very well at the WFEO level and also at regional level in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, and in the Americas. So that is actually what we need, because if some people will spare a lot of time to generate a document that will facilitate our work globally, it is only fair that a lot of people get to know about the document and use it very well. And we can only do that with, through adequate publicity of this document. So I thank very much. I thank you very much, Dr. Marlene Kanga, for this very, comprehensive presentation. And I also congratulate the chair of Anti-Corruption Committee, who is anchoring the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mustafa.
Yeah.
So the point is here at the moment is that we're looking for feedback on the standard, because it is still a draft standard. It's not ready for publication or to be publicized yet. We have to wait till it is published by ISO before we can go to that step.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Doctor, have you seen the question from Gonke? Can you respond to it?
Could you show the survey sheet and consultation form? So the survey is a survey monkey, and I don't think I can show that, but you can go on the consultation website and see it. But the form is, I will show the form. I will share my screen. Sorry. I will share my screen again. I just showed it momentarily, but I will share it again. So this is the form which is on the consultation web page. And what we're looking for is the page number, line number, and the clause, your comments, and the suggested change if you want to make a change. But if there's no change and you just want to comment on the clause, that is also acceptable. Do we have any other comments?
Not yet. I have seen Martin is there now. Can we give Mr. Martin, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you? Congratulations, Marlene, for a very sterling presentation.
Thank you.
My role is very simple. My role is very simple. Is to appeal to WFEO members to fill in the liaison form as directed by our member in the TC309, and also acknowledge the role WFEO has played over the years, especially Neil Stansbury, who was the chair of the last ISO 37001 standard, anti-bribery standard. And as WFEO, I think we've done a great work. We should continue to support the committee in the liaison so that they can give a very sterling feedback on behalf of all engineers. This standard is long overdue. As you can see, most governments had already enacted standards, governance standards as laws in their countries. So it's very important that as the WFEO, we give the appropriate feedback. I would also like to congratulate all those that participated, and also the chair of the Anti-Corruption Committee and all your members for a very good work. It is my hope and singular honor that WFEO will continue to rise in its own governance systems and show the example so that the whole of the PEO's organizations can then learn from the organization. And I congratulate also and recognize Professor Gonke for his sterling leadership for this visibility at ISO, and also his support by attending these webinars. To all those people from Africa, from Europe, from the Americas, congratulations, Marlene, for the hard work. Thank you so much, and I thank you for this opportunity to give the closing and remarks, and also ensure that members must not have apathy, and let's work hard as we always do. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Papias. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, President Gonke, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Martin.
I just wanted to answer a question, if I may, to Myanmar Engineering Council. They asked about feedback. So I want to say this to everyone. You can send your feedback on the comments form. You can send it in free form. But please send your comments. We really appreciate getting comments from as many countries as possible to the WFEO Secretariat. And please also, we will be sending the survey to all the participants who registered and attended tonight or today. But for those who haven't attended, you are still very welcome to send your comments, answer the survey. So please do that, and we look forward to hearing from you. We have a tight deadline of 15th August, so please send your feedback as soon as possible, and we will collate and send this to the ISO.
Thank you, Dr. Marlene. I take this opportunity to thank everyone for your attendance today. A recording of the webinar will be available on the WFEO website on Monday. We will also be sending you a brief survey for your comments on the draft standard. A reminder to please provide your comments on form and survey by 15th August this month. Once again, thank you in anticipation of your support and feedback.
Yes, thank you.
so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Martin, for your comments. Mustafa, thank you for your comments. Gonki, thank you for your attendance and support. And Papias, thank you very much for moderating this event. It's a very important event and very timely, I think. And I hope we will all get some benefit from the expert wisdom that's been presented in this document. I hope we all get something out of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.